Greetings to all and happy Thanksgiving from all of us at the Nintendo Village. This is Jeff from the Nindie Nation podcast, and it is almost Black Friday. In fact, some would call Thanksgiving Black Friday Eve. And as such, we're going to spend the next however long it takes going through 79 of the best indie game deals you can currently get on the Nintendo eShop. I've had my Thanksgiving, and then I spent the afternoon browsing through 831 different deals and picked the best ones. We're talking the highest rated Nindies, the brand new titles just recently hitting the eShop, and even games that we've seen on sale before. If they're 40% off or more, they are on this list. And so without much further ado, we're going to get right into it. We're going to talk about some multiplayer games up first because that's a great way to spend the Thanksgiving break. And then we're going to go down by category, talking through some action games, platformer games, all the way down to Metroidvanias and Roguelikes and side-scrollers. So stick with us, and if there's something that we missed that you think should be on the list, let us know on Twitter at Nindie Nation or at Village Nintendo. And please like, subscribe, share this with your friends, and let them know that these deals are good from Thanksgiving, which is November 28th, 2019, all the way to 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on December 4th. So you've got a handful of days to pick these up, but these are probably going to be the best deals on Nindies you're going to see all year long. Starting with Killer Queen Black, the game that is all the rage in the arcades right now, is 40% off for only $11.99. Unruly Heroes is also 40% off for $12.99 and is a really cool side-scrolling brawler type game with a beautiful art style. I saw this game released back in the fall and am really interested in trying it out for myself. The original Switch launch title, Snipper Clips, is half off for $9.99 and is a great casual game to play with a bunch of friends. And if you're in the mood for Killer Queen Black, you're probably also in the mood for Towerfall, which is also half off for $9.99. Killer Queen Black and Towerfall are two awesome party games made for 4 players or more that are very friendly to those that are new to the controller, but also incredibly deep for those that want to get really competitive. If you're looking for some adventures to go on together, Adventure Pals is 66% off for $5.09 and is a really fun 2-player action game, side-scrolling shooter of sorts with some really gross humor. It might be rated M. You might want to check that if you're going to play it with kids. I probably wouldn't recommend it. Another really cute animal game that's way over the top violent is Full Metal Furies, also for 66% off for $6.79. This is a mostly top-down action RPG, maybe a twin-stick shooter you could call. It's made by the team Cellar Door Games, who also created Rogue Legacy, and is really hard, but it's really fun to play, and the more people you have, 2, 3, or 4 players, the more fun you're going to get with this game where you're constantly trying levels over and over and over, but upgrading your characters on the side. I absolutely love Full Metal Furies. On the other side of things, and a much easier title, is Unraveled 2, the EA indie title published over the summer. Unraveled 2 has 2 characters. One's called Yarny. I forget what the new one's name is, but it's a 2-player kind of hand-holding puzzle platformer with gorgeous visuals, and would be a really good game. Aside from maybe a couple of intense scenes, would be a great title to play with a kid. Moving on from multiplayer games, let's talk about some 2D action platformers. So these are running around a big room trying to get from side A to side B and dying over and over and over again. Well, of course, we've got the best game of 2018, Celeste, is half off for $9.99. And this is a game that if you don't have it, you absolutely need to own Celeste. For $10, it's a single-player, emotional, incredible story with probably the best difficulty curve I've ever seen in a game. And a newer game that follows a similar pattern is called Invert, and it is also 50% off for only $2.49. Invert is a tough 2D action platformer where the gimmick is that you can flip the polarity of colors on the screen. So it's kind of like that one shoot 'em up game. What was that called? Ikaruga, where you are red and so you can only get hurt by blue things on the screen, but when you flip a button, then those colors get reversed, and so you have to flip buttons in mid-air to make it through platforming challenges, and for $2.50, I think it looks pretty cool. If we're talking about just straight up action though, here's a few games that you've got to try out. My Friend Pedro is one of the games with a smaller discount we'll talk about today, but it's fairly new and it's got a 30% discount for $13.99. And this game, it's the one that has a banana on the cover, if you've seen it before. It's really cool. It plays out like a slow motion Max Payne or John Wick type of game where you're diving through the air, kick flipping off of skateboards, shooting multiple guns off of frying pans that fly in the air. Watch a video for the game, and if you're like me, you'll look at it and say, how do you control that? And I mean, the answer is with some really intuitive control schemes that they've built. I love My Friend Pedro. Also published by Devolver Digital is the Hotline Miami collection, which is Hotline Miami 1 and 2. These are top-down, very gory, bloody games about clearing the rooms as quickly and efficiently as possible. It's 50% off for $12.49, and this is a brand new title. So if you're looking to pick up something that has just recently made its way to the Switch, Hotline Miami for 50% off is about as good as you're gonna get. And also published from Devolver Digital is Ape Out, and this is a game that we have a Let's Play Nindies of over on YouTube. Ape Out is also 50% off for $7.49 and is similarly a top-down action game where you're basically just running around as an ape who escaped a science lab, and you have simple 1 or 2 button controls where you shove bad guys out of the way and try to make it to the other side of the level as fast and efficiently as possible. Go check out the Let's Play if you want to see more, but for $7.50, that's also an awesome game I'd recommend. If you prefer your 2D action games with a little bit more of an action roguelike mentality, that means you're dying over and over, retrying the same stages. You're not supposed to beat them right out of the gate, but every single run you get a little bit better and a little bit closer because of permanent upgrades or unlocking new weapons and abilities. Well, that's this category for you now. In the action roguelike category, first is Dead Cells, another game that's only 30% off, but for $17.49, it is one of the best indie games that I think have been released in the last decade. In Dead Cells, you are a prisoner escaping from this gigantic prison with a big old tower and trying to make your way to the top to fight the final boss. And I think it took me 50 runs and over 40 hours of gameplay to finally clear it. So even with a $17.49 price tag, which is one of the pricier games we'll talk about today, there's a lot of content, and they've been adding even more. You can see more about Dead Cells in our Indies That Keep On Giving video. And yes, if you were able to hear that, that was my cat Callie who decided to come downstairs and talk to me about the deals, and I told her, "No, kitty, you don't have hands, you can't play Switch." One of my favorite roguelike games that really got me into the genre was 20XX, or I believe it's pronounced 20XTX, and it is 60% off for $7.19. Basically, 20XX or 20XTX is Mega Man X in a roguelike, so it's classic Mega Man style gameplay, but with lots of upgrades, tons of new abilities, daily challenges, and multiple playable characters, and you cannot go wrong with 20XTX for $7.19. And in terms of side-scrolling action roguelikes, there is no better than the original Rogue Legacy for a whopping 66% off for only $5.09. This is the other title created by Cellar Door Games, who made Full Metal Furies, and this game is just chock full of charm and fun and challenge, and I've still never beat it, but it plays a lot like Shovel Knight or any side-scrolling but kind of fast game with a mostly 8-bit or maybe 16-bit art style, and especially for just $5, I do recommend Rogue Legacy to everyone. But if you prefer your action more top-down, let's talk about some action RPGs. So all of these games, the general premise is going to be that you're looking down on the action from above, and the majority of the combat, I like to say, is something like Diablo. So you're either twin stick, shooting arrows or magic, or you're running around in a top-down perspective, mashing buttons, and there are significant RPG mechanics. So you could say this plays out kind of like a Zelda game or a Diablo, anywhere in between. And we're going to kick things off with a brand new action RPG for the Switch, Torchlight 2. And again, it's only 30% off, but it's only $14. And if you're looking for something like Diablo and you've already worn that game out, or maybe you want that kind of gameplay but with a little lighter tone, Torchlight 2 is exactly the game for you. Tangle Deep is a much more Zelda-like action RPG where you're going to feel much more at home if you prefer getting a story and exploring dungeons and that kind of stuff. It does have a little bit of roguelike elements in it, but it's also a fairly new game, so there's not a ton out there in terms of reviews. However, it does have pretty high ratings on Metacritic, and it has a 40% discount right now for only $12.99. One of the hardest to recommend yet most artistic action RPGs I've ever played is Hyper Light Drifter. It's also 40% off for only $11.99. And it's more of an adventure than an action RPG, just by way of there's not a ton of leveling or classic RPG mechanics. There's basically a skill tree, but it has an incredible premise with a really captivating story, and the game is just so atmospheric. It almost feels to me like what would happen in another parallel world where Metroid, instead of going first person with Metroid Prime, it went top-down action. That's kind of what it feels like. One of my most recent obsessions in this genre is Moonlighter, and this is one game that I recommend above all else, especially when it is half off for $12.49. Made by 11-Bit Games, the studio that has recently brought us Children of Morta, which I'm playing for review, is an incredible deal. You're going to spend half of your time roaming through dungeons collecting loot, and then you're going to spend the other half of your time acting as a shopkeep in the town of Moonlighter, selling your wares to other adventurers trying to climb up the mountain. And it is just wonderful. Another wonderful game that I sunk dozens of hours into is Lapis X Labyrinth. Now, this game is from NIS America, and they're technically an indie studio, but I never know where they should fall into these lists. But I haven't seen the game on sale much, and I really wanted to bring it to your attention. It's 50% off for $15. Like I said, I put dozens of hours into this game, and I bought it for $30 or maybe even $40 at the time. In Lapis X Labyrinth, you are going to be doing 2D RPG dungeon crawling. So you're hacking and slashing or firing weapons across big old randomly generated levels while collecting tons of loot and then going back to a town and cashing it in and getting a little further every time. And if you are someone who likes the more anime or Japanese art styles in your game, and you're looking for something where you can just grind away at it, Lapis X Labyrinth is right up your alley. Something in completely the opposite direction, Minute is the top-down action RPG that's all in black and white with a very simple 4 to 8-bit art style that takes place 60 seconds at a time, and you can pick it up for half off for $4.99. One of my favorites from this podcast is Cat Quest, 65% off for $4.54. And if you're looking for a no-frills, charming as heck, really simple hack and slash RPG, then Cat Quest is the thing for you. Just be ready for a Thanksgiving dinner's worth of cat puns. They're so good. Two of the best storytelling action RPGs we have seen this generation are Transistor and Bastion from Supergiant Games. Both of them are currently 75% off Transistor being $4.99, and Bastion being $3.74. I would recommend Bastion as your first take into the genre. It's a little simpler, and it has an awesome narrator that talks throughout the entire game. Transistor is a little deeper, more somber story and more of a sci-fi world, whereas Bastion is very fantasy. But they're both incredible games, and for less than $10, picking both of them up is a great idea. A newer entry in this genre is Rad, previously developed by Double Fine Games, who was recently acquired by Microsoft. We have a Let's Play Nindies of Rad if you want to check it out. It's on this list because it's new, and it's more of an action RPG roguelike, as are the next couple of games. But at 30% off for $13.99, it's not a bad game, but I'm gonna say because of some weird performance issues, check out Rad only if you've already played through the other two games we're about to talk about. Swords of Ditto, Mormo's Curse for half off for $7.49 is again a very charming hack and slash action RPG that plays a lot like Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past or maybe the new Link's Awakening, but with a little more storybook art style and a lot more RPG elements inside of it. Probably the leader of this pack for action RPG roguelikes is one we've talked about a lot recently on Nindie Nation, and that is Monospark for 99 cents, which is 90% off. It's primarily a twin-stick hack and slash game, so you're usually using both sticks, aiming and firing arrows or magic, and it is very hard, but that doesn't mean it's frustrating. It's just they really lean into the thing where you're going to get a little bit better every time and a lot of times before you progress too far. Monospark is absolutely worth it for anybody who likes either twin-stick shooters or any kind of RPG, and at 99 cents, you got no excuses now, friends. And if you want to hear a great story, but you don't really care so much for the RPG mechanics of it, well, the next 5 or 6 games are for you. Shantae Half Genie Hero is half off for $10 and is a gorgeous Saturday morning cartoon, almost a Metroidvania. It's a very simple side-scrolling action platformer with awesome voice acting and a really quirky sense of humor that I just love. And similarly, sharing a lot of those same elements, but with more of a retro mechanic and a brand new entry, is Mabel and the Wood, also for 50% off for $7.49. This game is also on Xbox Game Pass. Just want to throw that out there in case you already own it and you don't realize it. Grease, the award-winning, very artistic, mostly story-driven 2D platformer from last year is half off for $8.49. And I will warn you, I have seen that one go a little bit lower in the past, I think, but this is pretty close to the bottom. Blaster Master Zero was one of my favorite original Nindies on the Switch. It's half off for $4.99, and it blends RPG action, side-scrolling elements, top-down RPG stuff, and Metroidvania all into one game, and it does so very, very well in a game that includes New Game Plus, fun story elements, and really cool retro graphics. Blaster Master Zero really is the full package, and if you're looking for a $5 game to take a chance on, that would be one I recommend. Another new game in this genre, and one I'm going to be picking up, a 2D action platformer with heavy RPG leveling mechanics, is Fox and Forests. It's 75% off, also for $5, and looks absolutely adorable, and I'm going to pick it up, so listen to the Nindie Nation podcast in the coming weeks to see how I like it. Now, we're going to take a quick break from some of those old boring stories, and we're going to dig into some good old arcade games. So, the following titles, and there are 6 or 7 of them, are mostly going to be focused on score chasing, getting through levels. Many of them are only 45 minutes long or so, and most of them are fun to play with a friend as well. Freedom Finger, the side-scrolling shmup, is a new game, and it has a very Adult Swim cartoon mechanic. I mean, for the majority of the game, you are a flying middle finger, so, keep that in mind. It's only 25% off, but it's so new that I wanted to make sure you were aware of it for $14.99. Downwell is a vertically scrolling black and white arcade game where you jump down a well, you have guns for boots, and when you shoot, you also jump up in the air a little bit. And so you're working your way down the tunnels, trying to get as far as you can without dying at the hands of the red enemies on the screen. Really cool premise, and it is 50% off for $1.49, and is one of the games that I have to say, of these 79 or 80 games, you should definitely put on your download list for this sale. Mother Russia Bleeds is another entry from Devolver Digital, and one of their earlier games before they really started hitting the big time. It's 75% off for $3.74 and is an action arcade brawler, so you're running left to right, moving back and forward in the screen a little bit, just punching and kicking dudes to your heart's content. It's got a pretty crude, pixely art style and is definitely more mature in theme, but has been widely received as a pretty good side-scrolling beat-em-up. Ding Dong XL is another game that I consider a must-buy in this sale. It is 80% off for only 24 cents. We have a Let's Play Nindies of it on the YouTube channel, and it is a very simple one-button, one-player or two-player score chaser game that's kind of like a Pong of sorts, and I highly, highly recommend it. Similarly, in the cheap game category, and a game that we also have a Let's Play Nindies of, is Laser Kitty Pow Pow. It is 97% off for 29 cents, and it's weird, man. I don't really know how to explain it. You press L and R, but when you press R, you move to the right, but you shoot to the left, and you're a floating cybernetic cat head. I don't know. Watch the video or just drop 29 cents on it. I got a couple hours of fun out of it, and it's a fun game to turn on and then put in the hand of a friend who doesn't know what they're getting themselves into. So, Laser Kitty Pow Pow, 29 cents. Ding Dong XL, 24 cents. Both fantastic, fun, pick up and play games that will hang out in your home row a lot. You'll jump back into them between other games. Phew, how we feeling, friends? We're about halfway through the list, and I can see about 20 minutes on the clock so far, so we'll have to see how much of this I end up cutting out. We've got a couple of puzzle games for you. One of them is fairly new. Both of them are 50% off for $7.49. The first is Puzzle Quest: The Legend Returns. This game is like over 10 years old and is a match 3 type game. It's kind of like Bejeweled, but with really deep fantasy and RPG elements. And the other one is Luminous Remastered, a falling block game not too unlike a Tetris that has a very heavy emphasis on the electronic dance music that is constantly playing in the background and syncing up with all of the visuals. And then we've only got 2 traditional RPGs. If you're in the mood for getting a party together and going on a big, grand adventure, well, we've got 2 titles for you that will fit that mold. The first is Y2K, a postmodern RPG. It's a game that takes place in the 90s, and I like to think of it as an RPG for people that aren't necessarily RPG fans. And I also lump games like Earthbound or Saturday Morning RPG into those categories. It is 60% off for $7.99, and the other title is Earthlock, which we've talked about recently, and that is a very traditional JRPG style game. You're going to build a party, you're going to go into turn-based battles, you're going to explore a bunch of JRPG tropes like the end of the world and the chosen one and all that kind of stuff, and it is 80% off for $6, and you are definitely going to get your money's worth out of it for that price. And if you like RPGs, but you prefer them with a little flair of strategy, there's 3 options for you during this sale. The first one is the fairly new Wargroove, which is 30% off for $13.99. And if you are a fan of Advance Wars and are not sure why we haven't gotten a new one yet, probably because of Fire Emblem. But if you're looking for more Advance Wars, Wargroove is as close as you're gonna get. It's basically the same game, but with more of a fantasy medieval type theme to it. Also, the Banner Saga 1 or 2, and definitely start with the first one if you've never played them, are really neat hand-drawn, like Vikings and barbarian time era, the Lost Age, if you will, about a group going on a long adventure, and it has lots of permadeath and stuff like that. It's really tough and has a really mature story, but it is very well made, and you can get the first or second Banner Saga 80% off for $5 each, and they're like 20-plus hour games, so you're going to get a lot out of those as well. And finally, a very unique title in this genre is SteamWorld Heist, also 80% off for $5.99. It is a side-scrolling, tactical, turn-based RPG. So you move your characters into position, there's multiple vertical lanes on the screen, and you do things like bounce your shots off of walls, or leverage snipers and machine guns, or rocket launchers, and there's collateral damage. And it is a game that really surprised me. If you have been on the fence about SteamWorld Heist, I was for like a year before I finally played it, and I loved it. So use this 80% off $6 price as the reason to finally jump into it, and I'm sure you will be pleasantly surprised, just as I was. And before we jump into the strictly side-scrolling action genre, let's go for a few Metroidvanias, and I know that that's a very lazy term, so I'll lay it out for you. The premise of the following three games are basically that you're in a storytelling adventure, you're navigating a large side-scrolling space, be it a mine or a enemy's base or whatever the case is, and you are finding areas that you can't access until you find some new ability, so the game by design encourages you to go back and look for new areas with the new abilities that you've already found. The first game is Sundered, and it is beautiful, made by the team that also made Jotun. It is a hand-drawn, gorgeously animated game that's fairly new on the Switch, and if you're looking for a gorgeous Metroidvania-style game, it is 60% off for $7.99. Do not miss Sundered. It's one of the games I will be picking up in this sale. Axiom Verge is one of the highest rated indie games of the last decade. Originally coming out on the PlayStation platforms, it is 60% off for $7.99, and if you want as close to Super Metroid as you can get, Axiom Verge is the way to go. SteamWorld Dig 2 is an incredible, gorgeous, huge Metroidvania-style game where the main premise is that you're digging downward through mines into underground bases and upgrading your equipment along the way. And SteamWorld Dig 2 is 50% off for $9.99. I will warn you, I've seen it go a little bit cheaper, so if this is one that you're debating, it's at the very height of your budget, I'll say wait, because I have seen SteamWorld Dig 2 go as low as $7 in the past. But Jeff, you say, I just want to blow things up, or I just want to run side to side and attack things. Well, then these next sections are all for you. Here are the side-scrolling action games currently on sale. The first couple have a lower discount, but they're fairly new games that haven't seen many sales yet. The first one being Biolab Wars. Now, granted, I bought this game half off for 99 cents, and I made a Let's Play Nindies of it, and it's currently only 10% off for $1.79, but it's still super cheap. Biolab Wars is basically a spiritual successor to Contra, and I had a blast with it, and I do recommend it, especially for less than $2. Furwind is a fairly new side-scrolling action game. It is 30% off for $6.99. And Katana Zero is the side-scrolling stealth one-hit kill game that has a deep, deep story about therapy and mental well-being and substance abuse underneath its retro aesthetic top layer. It's 33% off for $9.74. Door Kickers Action Squad is also 33% off for $9.74, and it's a cool game about like a SWAT team that has to go into buildings, clear out rooms, save hostages, kill the bad guys, or arrest them. It's got a really cool premise, and it's, again, fairly new, and it's been getting really good reviews, so probably worth it if you've got a little extra room in that Nindie budget. The Messenger is currently 40% off for $12 and is basically what would happen if you took all of the best elements from the 8-bit type of games, mixed them with all of the best elements from 16-bit action games, and put them in together in one game that plays a lot like a Ninja Gaiden title. The Messenger is one of the best indie games you can find. And it's $12. I think I've seen it a little bit cheaper, but it includes the new additional expansion DLC. And so for that reason, I still recommend it at $12. If you have not played The Messenger, this is definitely one that should be at the top of your list. Also one that I would want to slap you if you haven't played yet, unless you're one of those Sonic the Hedgehog haters. Sonic Mania is half off for $9.99, and it's a Sonic game, and it's got co-op. You're going to run left to right, you're going to explore the levels, try to find hidden paths and hidden special stages, and eventually stop Dr. Robotnik or Eggman, or I always get confused which one's the east versus the west of what we call them. Anyways, it's the Jim Carrey character. And also Bloodstained, Curse of the Moon. This is what I think is the better Bloodstained title. It is basically Castlevania 3. It's a slow, methodical, side-scrolling action platformer with multiple playable characters that you'll swap between. And what I like about it is it has a kind of an easy or casual mode, as well as a more traditional mode. So you can see the whole game, get the New Game Plus, and then kick it up into the harder difficulty and see the game with its original challenge. It is only $5 and is 50% off, and if you're looking for something that feels like an original Nintendo NES game, Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, you can't go wrong with. Now take everything that I said about Bloodstained Curse of the Moon and The Messenger, all that love letter stuff about how great they are representing NES 8-bit games, and basically apply that to a Mega Man style game, and that's what you've got with Mighty Gunvolt Burst, with the kicker being that you can also play it with a melee-focused character, which is Gunvolt. It is 50% off for $5, and I will say if you are looking for two retro 8-bit style games for the Switch as part of this sale, Bloodstained Curse of the Moon and Mighty Gunvolt Burst will give you two very complementary experiences that I think you'll really enjoy. If stealth is more of your thing, as is a more modern, colorful, animated art style, then Mark of the Ninja is half off for $9.99. I'll tell you what, if you're in the mood for some side-scrolling action games, this deal, this whole sale is just awesome. A new game, two new games actually. Battle Princess Madeline is a lot like a Ghouls and Ghosts type game where it's really tough, lots of gothic elements on the screen, telling a heartwarming story, but it's brutally tough and you get kind of the 2 hits until you're dead, but you can get power-ups to get one more hit, just like Ghouls and Ghosts or Ghosts and Goblins, is 60% off for $7.99. And I've got two ways to describe Damsel. On one hand, it would kind of be like if you took Bayonetta and made it a retro 2D game. The other would be if you took the premise of a Ninja Gaiden game and instead made it a female protagonist who could flip around and shoot vampires. That's what you get with Damsel. Both of these games, this and Battle Princess Madeline, are new. They're both 60% off. Damsel is $6.79, and they both are going on my list to buy as part of this sale. If you're keeping track, I'm spending a good amount of money on this sale so far. And Double Cross, the gorgeous hand-drawn Metroidvania made by the team who created Runbow, that's 13 AM Games, takes the premise of a Metroidvania and instead applies a lot of the elements of upgrading to the movement and abilities to get around the world, more so than just the weapons you collect. And so I would say this is going to be more of an adventure than action, but Double Cross is currently 75% off for only $4.99. And friends, we're getting close to the end. We are winding down the 2019 Black Friday eShop blowout with 5 twin-stick shooters and 8 or 9 games that I could only classify as other. So we'll get to those in a second. First, the twin-stick shooters. The first 2 are on my must-recommend list, being Assault Android Cactus, a game that there is also a Let's Play Nindies of on the YouTube channel, is 50% off for $10. And it is an incredibly traditional twin-stick shooter. You're moving around arenas, you're leveraging weapons, you have, I think, 10 different playable characters. It's level and world-based, and there's not any kind of RPG or roguelike elements. It's just a good traditional shooter that looks gorgeous and has incredible performance levels. So, very highly recommend that one. Enter the Gungeon is an incredible twin-stick shooter if what you're looking for is a lot more roguelike and RPG mechanics. You want to try over and over and over again, taking out the bosses, seeing a bunch of randomly generated worlds, and collecting over 300 different guns that are all ridiculous and funny looking. This game has also received, I think, 3 or 4 significantly large updates, which you can see in our Nindies That Keep On Giving video on the YouTube channel. Enter the Gungeon is also half off for $7.49. Galaxy Void Deluxe Edition is 75% off for $3.74, and it's a twin-stick shooter that looks a lot more like a sci-fi shoot-'em-up. You're in mechs, there's lots of aerial combat, you're actually more exploring kind of an area, almost like Asteroids or something. I mean, I guess Asteroids is kind of the original twin-stick shooter, as it were, but Galaxy the Void is not the free-to-play Galak-Z. That's Galak-Z. See, now that I spelled that out, I bet you've pictured seeing it in the eShop. It's not the crappy free-to-play game that I played and discussed on the podcast about a year ago. In fact, it is the full-blown, including the DLC, retail release for only $3.74. Atomic Heist is a very small, I think it was developed by just a couple of people, game, and I think it was released by Dragius Games, who I recently asked what their name meant, and it's Latin for dragon, so Dragon Games. Atomic Heist is 75% off for $1.99, and it is, again, a twin-stick roguelike shooter, so you're going to be getting permanent upgrades while retrying the same levels. And I do criticize this game for being a little too hard for its own good, but I also know that there are people that want exactly that. And if that's what you're looking for and you've already played Enter the Gungeon, Atomic Heist is a good pick. And finally, in the twin-stick category, Blazing Beaks is a fairly new game that's 80% off for $3. And you guessed it, this is one that's going on my wish list to be picked up during this sale as well. And it is an RPG-focused twin-stick roguelike shooter with cute little duck animals and other beaked, winged creatures that for some reason are shooting each other. And if Monkey Barrels was also on this list, I would compare it to that. But go check out Blazing Beaks because I'm going to, and we can share our thoughts about it on Twitter over at Nindie Nation. And bringing things home, we have the other category. Kicking things off with Travis Strikes Back, No More Heroes. It is 50% off for $14.99, and this game is a lot of different things. And I'm pretty sure you have to be a fan of the No More Heroes franchise to really get and like this game. It's super weird, created by Suda51, and essentially their test to build some revenue so that they could afford to make No More Heroes 3. Gone Home was the award-winning visual novel, walking simulator, whatever you want to call it, about a girl that goes home to see her family, and you spend the next couple of hours walking around learning about the family and the protagonist's life by kind of rummaging through their house. It's 50% off for $7.49. If you want to be not introspective and somber, you can try Goat Simulator, the Goaty. 50% off for $14.99 is a hilarious physics-based game. They sell it like it's a Tony Hawk Pro Skater kind of game, and I guess you kind of can fling the goat around, but it's really just something funny to do with your friends at the end of a long day of work, is just throw the goat off a cliff or tie it to a rocket and watch it blast off into space, or just have it grab onto the bumper of a car and bounce down the road. It's really stupid, but it's good fun, and you get 4 different games for that $15 price tag. Ollie Ollie Switch Stance is Ollie Ollie 1 and 2, and they are side-scrolling skating games, and they're the kind of game that you're going to play over and over, trying to get the perfect amount of button combinations and working to land every skill flawlessly to get the highest score possible. It's really fun, and you get 2 games at 60% off for only $6. The Gardens Between is a mix of puzzle and strategy, kind of a walking simulator in some aspects, about 2 people that are on an island and kind of learning about themselves and their relationships. Very introspective, very much if you like Gone Home, this is a good game to try out. The Gardens Between is 60% off as well for $7.99. My favorite tower defense game is Pixel Junk Monsters 2, which recently made its way over to the Switch and is currently 66% off for $4.49. If you've never played a tower defense game, I think Pixel Junk Monsters 2 is the perfect entry. When Ski Lifts Go Wrong was a Nindie that was focused on a lot in a recent Nindie Direct by Nintendo, and then it kind of came out, just kind of hit with a thud, despite being a pretty good game. It's similar to Goat Simulator. It's physics-based comedy, but you're basically working at a ski resort and building ski lifts and ramps and all that kind of stuff, and trying to make sure that the physics do not send your guests plummeting to their death. And when they do, it looks hilarious. When Ski Lifts Go Wrong is also 66% off for $5.99. Another game that could probably be in the multiplayer category but is perfectly playable solo is Don't Starve. You're a single person or a single person and a friend out in the woods, and during the day you're trying to gather items to be able to survive the night when the monsters and other mean animals come out. Don't Starve is a highly regarded indie game and has won many awards and has received many expansions, and you can pick up Don't Starve for 75% off for only $5.99. And finally, if you have some really good headphones and you want to test them out by sitting in a dark room, blasting down the rails into a rhythm-like game experience that is incredibly intense, well, Thumper is just the game for you at 75% off for $4.99. But warning, Thumper is a rhythm game, but it is intense and it is dark, but it's really good. What are you picking up? Let me know over on Twitter at Nindie Nation, or chat with the other guys at the Nintendo Village on Twitter at Village Nintendo. As a very quick recap, these are titles that if you don't have in your library, you should strongly consider. We've got Enter the Gungeon and Assault Android Cactus, both twin-stick shooters, both half off. Enter the Gungeon is $7.50 and Assault Android Cactus is $10. Bloodstained Curse of the Moon is a great side-scrolling retro action platformer for $5, which is half off. Axiom Verge is a gorgeous 8-bit Metroidvania game where you're going to explore an underground lair, and it's got a really cool sci-fi theme. It is 60% off for $7.99, and that is definitely the lowest price I've ever seen Axiom Verge sell for. SteamWorld Dig 2 half off for $10. If you're looking for something a little more arcadey, Downwell is the downward vertical scrolling arcade game that's half off for $1.49. Blaster Master Zero is a great pick if you want an adventure game with a retro style that has a cool art style and a fun story. Blaster Master Zero is half off for $4.99. Bastion is a gorgeous action RPG with an incredible story that is told by one of the best narrators in media. It is 75% off for $3.74. And if you want a bit more to do in your action RPG, Moonlighter is 50% off for $12.49. You'll spend half of your time running a shop and half of your time looting a dungeon, and it's a great time. If you have never played a roguelike game, or you like 2D side-scrolling action games and you've never played Rogue Legacy, now is the time to jump in. It is 66% off for $5.09. The best indie that you can possibly buy, I think, is Celeste, and it is 50% off for $10. And if you're looking for a great game to add to your multiplayer collection, Adventure Pals is 66% off for $5.09. Phew! It's a lot of games. What'd I say? 79 titles in total? Well, thank you very much for listening. Again, I am Jeff. I am a part of the Nindie Nation podcast. We are a weekly podcast dedicated to everything independently developed for the Nintendo Switch. You can find us on Twitter at Nindie Nation. We've got a YouTube channel with all kinds of cool stuff, and you can find the podcast wherever fine podcasts are synced on your phone or desktop computer. If you want other things Nintendo related and not necessarily just indie games, well, that's okay with me, I suppose. You can head over to the Nintendo Village at thenintendovillage.com, where there are daily feature articles, reviews, and previews of the latest games, and a slew of other weekly shows, including Nintendo Nostalgia and the Nintendo Village podcast itself. Nindie Nation is a part of the Nintendo Village, and we thank them for their support. And any of you Nintendo Village listeners that are hearing this for the first time, come on over. The Nindie water's fine. With that, thank you for your time this week. Again, I'm Jeff. It's been a pleasure running through all of these deals for you. I can't wait to hear about what you've picked up. And with all of these deals, I know that until we speak again, you'll have more than enough to keep your Joy-Cons synced.